G'day, church. I hope this devotion finds you well. I know just over the last couple of weeks I've been pretty weary, pretty sick of lockdown and all that's required of us or not required of us. But in that state of weariness and frustration, God brought a bit of a challenge and encouragement to me through the book of Proverbs. And so I'd like to share that with you now. It's really a challenge and an encouragement that cheerfulness is what I need and what you need during lockdown. That God will use cheerfulness to bless and bring healing and bring encouragement and a good family life within this lockdown. Before I read just 3 Proverbs on cheerfulness, I just remind you that the book of Proverbs is about the wise life. Those who fear the Lord live a wise life. It recognizes, the book does, that God has kind of sent streams of wisdom throughout all life, so that if we follow God's wisdom in the way we behave and the way we think and the way we live, that actually things are going to go smoother for us as we recognize God's wisdom, as we recognize God's way of living. So particularly as we come to cheerfulness, we're just going to recognize that within lockdown, within discouragement, within weariness, that God has ordered his world in such a way that cheerfulness is going to be immense help and privilege and blessing for us, even in these circumstances. So let me just read 3 Proverbs on cheerfulness. The first one comes from Proverbs 17:22. A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. And then Proverbs 15, verse 15. The cheerful heart has a continual feast. And then Proverbs 15:30. A cheerful look brings joy to the heart, and good news gives health to the bones. I'm not naturally a cheerful person. I tend to be more of a glum person, just my natural temperament. And so that becomes even worse when you're in lockdown and stuck at home for long periods of time. And so these verses don't come naturally or easy to me, but I need to read them and believe that cheerfulness is truly going to bless my life. You'll see that cheerfulness is something that happens internally within ourselves, that it happens in our heart and goes to the level of our bones. So when we have a cheerfulness, it's good for our bones. That is our most internal part of ourselves. So I just want you to note again that chapter 17 verse 22, cheerful heart is good medicine. So we're frantically getting vaccinated, frantically looking for medicines and cures for COVID. Unfortunately, none of those things help you when you're discouraged at home, bored, tired, weary. None of those things help you with that internal discouragement and weariness. But God said, hey, I've got medicine for you to take. I've got something you can do that is wise. I've ordered the world so that when you pursue cheerfulness, joy in your heart, it's like a medicine. It brings healing to your life, healing to your internal life, so that you can have joy and wholeness. Cheerfulness is an internal blessing. It's good for us. Next, I want you to see that cheerfulness means that we experience the world with much more fullness. So there was the proverb in chapter 15, verse 15. The cheerful heart has a continual feast. It goes on in some other proverbs to say it's better to have just a little bit of food with a good attitude in your home than to have a feast where everybody hates each other. So the idea here is that if you have a cheerful heart, you'll experience everything as though it's a feast. You'll experience even difficult and hard or small circumstances as though they are wonderful and good. that cheerfulness, I guess, is able to kind of multiply or embellish difficult circumstances and give you joy even in moments of challenge. The experience of going through weeks, months of lockdown is not nice, and yet with cheerfulness in our heart, it becomes a feast. It becomes a good experience. It's not bothersome at all. It's still a feast for us. As we pursue cheerfulness, we can actually have a feast even during lockdown. And then one more proverb that shows really that cheerfulness brings goodness and cheer into our relationships. So that was chapter 15, verse 30. A cheerful look brings joy to the heart. So as we receive cheerfulness in ourselves, as we experience the blessing of cheerfulness and the experiences we have in life, we have a cheerful face. And as other people see that, they receive our cheer, they receive our happiness, our joy. And of course, that's really important in your household, in your bubble now, that if you're all a bit glum, like I am, then actually it's just a downward spiral, rather than recognizing that we bring cheer to other people as we have it internally, as we experience it in this world. We bring joy to other people's hearts. It can be passed on and shared as we have a cheerful heart. So I'd really encourage you, whether if you're discouraged or weary, just to stop now and recognize that cheerfulness, that I know this might be a bit of a shallow way of thinking of it, but looking on the bright side, that God has so ordered our world that if we pursue cheerfulness, that it is going to truly bless our internal life, our experience of lockdown, and our time with our families and whoever's within our bubble. God actually says if you pursue cheerfulness, that is going to bring much more joy, much more blessing into your life. I know that as I've endeavored to be more cheerful this last week, I have felt much more love and thankfulness towards Anna. I've been able to experience better moments with my children. I haven't been cheerful all the time at all. I've been frustrated and angry and sick of being woken up at night by the kids. But I know that because I've pursued cheerfulness, it has been better for me. There's one New Testament passage too that comes to mind when we speak about cheerfulness, that God loves a cheerful giver. The idea being that we can have cheerfulness even as we're giving away our possessions. And the reason we can do that is because we know that God blesses the cheerful giver. God blesses those who give and serve him. Now, as we think about looking on the bright side and pursuing the bright side of life and pursuing cheerfulness, we of course have to bring God into this. We have to be able to acknowledge and see God's blessing, God's goodness to us, God's sustaining grace, God's forgiveness. Because even if you just look on the bright side of life without God, I still think that cheerfulness is so hardwired into our world that you will have a more happy face. You will experience life with more feast-like qualities. But the fact that you and I know God, the fact that you and I know he sent his one and only Son, the fact that you and I have the Spirit who lives within us, the spirit of joy and peace and patience and kindness, means we can look around our world, look at our families, look at our life, and be cheerful because God's with us, because God blesses us, because God watches over us. So can I encourage you this week and the coming few days to pursue cheerfulness, knowing that as you have cheerfulness in your heart, that it's going to bless every area of your life.